Richard Dorsey here, Dialogue 340. I have the wonderful pleasure of having our return celebrity, Miss Nazira, with us.
Hello.
I know Mikey. But we also have Senator Vialet. And before we even jump into this conversation, I want to say this publicly. We are not here to trip up, to bash, to argue, to disarm, or try to do any type of conversation that's not productive and conducive to having a healthy and open discourse. And I extend that olive branch to the senator so that he knows that we're not here to make anyone look bad. These are the few opportunities that we have to have an open conversation with people who are already in the trenches, elected on our behalf. Remember, if he's doing his job, it's on our behalf. So it's on our job as Dialogue 340 to have that open conversation. So Mike, he's going to try his best to keep me on topic. I might go off road, so we're going to stop. Before we jump in, how you doing, Nazira?
I'm doing well.
Good. So we definitely want to bring her back because she was one of the two young ladies, if you saw in any of the last podcasts, really set Facebook on fire for us because they said some things that were probably in the hearts and minds of a lot of individuals. So we want to have that good balance. Senator, for you, I have a few pointed questions that I'll start off with. Do you think the average Virgin Islander understands the role of a senator?
No.
Why?
They don't realize the impact of the office. Some, when you're campaigning, they literally don't care or don't have time to even understand how politics plays a part in their regular life. On a regular basis, they're just trying to make ends meet. So they don't have the time to internalize or to study or to educate themselves about other issues. So a lot of it is just a system, just trying to survive, and they don't understand or realize the different branches of government and how each and every one of them operate. Everybody really believes that the Senate is the executive branch. They think the Senate is the judicial, so they'll say, why the senators don't fix the road? Why the senators don't do this for education? But in reality, that's the executive branch. The Senate pass bills, they create a balanced budget, they deal with nominations, but people don't really understand. So one of the things that we did a couple of years back, we passed Virgin Islands civics education. So the law was passed, and within the process, we were able to produce a civics textbook that incorporates Virgin Islands history, Virgin Islands civics. It just came out last year. So we're hoping that is going to help, because when you're now studying about civics, instead of just studying about the U.S. Senate or the U.S. Congress, there's a whole chapter on the legislature and the executive branch, etc. So I think hopefully that should help.
So we'll be a little humorous before we get into the weeds. What has been one of the craziest requests you've gotten from a constituent? Completely out of the park, not part of your purview or your jurisdiction, but nonetheless, you fielded the question.
Well, a lot of them will be private. I've gotten requests. My child is going to college. Can you pay for the tuition for her or him? A lot of it is always money based. A lot of times people don't realize that senators are just normal people, just like you. They get a basic salary, but somehow a lot of people believe that it's a great source of funding. And in reality, when you look at all the different branches of government, the senator salary is really the lowest. Senators get $85,000, assistant commissioners get 100 and something, directors get 100,000. But I mean, it's par for the course, and a lot you just gotta explain. Hey, I'm not able to do that. You diplomatically explain to them exactly what is taking place.
And what has been a constituent concern that made you feel like they were paying attention? When you hear a concern from a constituent that's like, okay, thank you, you're paying attention, I can work on that.
I could say that within the last couple of years, a lot more people paying attention. Before, to me, a lot of people, kind of disjointed, didn't realize what was going on, with the exception of a select group. But I'm seeing more and more that a lot of people are paying attention. And sometimes you're surprised. And I was walking to the market, there was this guy on the ground, he was eating mango, and he called out to me, hey, Senator Vialet. He said, I look at all the sessions. I could tell you what you did last week. So there's a lot more people paying attention. I believe that recently, the humorous 340 comics have brought a different element to politics. So more people are listening because it's funny. And the good thing that so far about it is that they put the clip right underneath. So they're able to then look at the clip. So you have more people now tuning in or more people waiting to see exactly what is taking place. So that has helped to me to expand the number of individuals that are looking at politics on a regular basis.
Do you think you have something? Go ahead.
I did.
This is just free conversation.
I think that the approach has changed recently to how we view politics locally, in that with the civics textbook, like we said before, we know the branches of the government, but finding out how it relates to us and what is the executive power here, it doesn't always translate to America. And when we learn America, it's hard to say, okay, but what does that mean here? So I think, again, with the comics, and there's a lot of people over the years who on social media, I've seen individuals do breakdowns. Like, this happened at this testimony. This person sits down and watches it and says, okay, so what you need to know is they proposed this, and this person asked for more money, and they said no, and they said no because they didn't come with these numbers. So those breakdowns, I think we're seeing them more, and it gives people an idea of, okay, now that I know this, when I watch it next time, I already have some information to go off of, instead of feeling like I have to figure this all out by myself and start from scratch. So I'm seeing the change, but I do agree that we need to see more of it.
We also have a very different government, and people don't understand that. We're a unicameral system, so we don't have two houses. We don't have a Senate and Congress. We don't have mayors. We don't have municipal leadership. We have one Senate that takes the place of all of that. So if you go to a state like Florida, Florida has multiple mayors for each county. They have municipal government in each different area. We don't have that, and people don't really understand that. So they'll make a comparison with a Virgin Islands senator with somebody from Florida that has totally different responsibility because the structure is just totally different. So getting to understand that, I think, is helpful to a lot of people, but it's getting better.
So let me ask a dangerous question. This is a safe space.
Everybody's saying crazy.
Not your current colleagues, your previous colleagues. Did they understand what the role of a senator was?
It takes time for some people. It really takes time. I think a lot of people believe they know
That's true.
what it entails when they're running, but when they're elected, they realize that it's totally different, because then you realize the scope of the job. You realize it's just not talking. You got to have individuals that are good at research and drafting. So it's a whole different scope, and I'm hoping that that we continue to improve.
Because I ain't gonna lie, when I was part, I believe, the 28th legislature, under a senator, I watched the telenovelas. I'm sorry, the hearings, and I was baffled by some of the senators' inability to stay germane or even understand rules of order. And it was a little disheartening, because at that time I was definitely younger, very energetic and hopeful about the Virgin Islands. And I would watch it and I got this sense of theater, of performance. Do you think...
That's politics.
Hold on. Before we get to politics, I want to specifically talk about VI politics, which is our performance, where I've seen people be thrashed in the hearing, and then they come outside, pat them on the back. I just had to beat you up a little bit, man. Don't worry, we're gonna pass your vote. Don't worry, man, you're gonna get in. I've heard these conversations for myself. Do you think sometimes the theatrics gets in the way of actual good politics? So not this set of colleagues. So I want you to go back to work and they're upset with you. Maybe
I'm gonna be fine, because anything I say here is what I would say publicly or what I would say right in front of them. The politics no different in the Virgin Islands to the mainland. Okay, I could name a number of congressmen and female women that don't understand the role, and it's our politics, it's our theater. It happens all over. Unfortunately, I think that at times we equate asking hard questions with bashing, and asking hard question isn't bashing. I mean, going on the next tangent is bashing, but if you ask somebody for information that they should know because of the position that they have. They're the CFO, and I'm asking you, well, what is your personal cost, how many outstanding vendor payments, and it's information you should know, and you say, I got to get back to you. And then you say, well, you should have walked with that information. Don't you know it? Somebody might say, oh, you're bashing a person, but in reality, you're not. You're just asking for accountability. So to me, the big question is, how do you bring about accountability without individuals feeling that you're bashing them, or individuals coming prepared? So I like the fact that people say, hey, I know you're going to ask a question about numbers, really, so I'm going to be ready for when you ask a question, because I know you're going to ask X, Y, and Z. And we have seen those that are good, and we have seen those that struggle. But those that struggle, it shows that they don't understand exactly what they're doing, and that has an overall impact on government.
So, Mikey, jump in, because you know me. I keep going.
No, there's such a duality to your statement too, because sometimes not saying for this current legislative,
We'll leave them alone. Yeah.
I'm just simply saying that, like, there are times where you watch hearings, and sometimes I think the Senate gives off a vibe that they're normal people that come to the chambers to testify, and sometimes y'all ooze out this feeling, and it does affect them, because you just see it happen where they stutter, they shut down, they know of us, and I think it's because normal people don't get the chance to just step inside of the chambers, and I often do see it on their body language and they face it. Y'all, as senators, sometimes
it could be intimidating.
Yeah, like really bad to where exactly, and it'll really, and because also because I've been in the chambers, like, y'all are there, and then they're looking up, it's like, it does add a level of seriousness, but it has a level of intimidation. So I understand what you're saying, but also sometimes I don't feel a little bad for certain people, because they'd be like, but as senators, you should know better. Like, this is your constituent, this is your, what's the word I'm looking for?
Your committee,
your committee, exactly.
Yeah.
It's your community, so ain't I need to go like a wolf and shout them out. I understand we want the numbers, we want the facts, but there are times where in other senates that we've had where you just wolf out somebody and they just come together. A simple situation, have a hearing about, and it divulges into a whole other
the theater.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But you have to realize too, right, that there are different strategies that people utilize when they come before the legislature. And there's strategies that people utilize so that they don't give information. If I ask you something that the people want to know, and you say, can I get that for you later? The people don't know it. And the people are not going to get the information. I could put it in writing and you submit it to me, but the people are not going to get that information. And when I look at the performance in the legislature, and some questionable, some I don't agree with, and some I would reach over and say, hey, I don't think that was appropriate, or some you should know the answer, you're just asking something way out. And I would say, hey, that question wasn't applicable to what we're dealing with. I'll say that privately. But when I've looked at congressional hearings, and I see congressmen saying, you need to apologize to the CEO, which CEO was recently, stand up and apologize. I mean, totally disrespecting. I mean, you look at British Parliament. I don't know if you ever look at Parliament.
Yeah.
Come on, they're literally they're ready to fight.
Yeah.
But somehow in the Virgin Islands, we believe, because of the closeness of the community, that it's supposed to be a love fest in the Senate. The Senate job is accountability.
I want to touch on that specifically. And like I said before, this is an open conversation, not attacking anyone. But if you feel the blows, I'm so sorry. I find it hard to believe that selected leaders, not elected, the ones that sit before you to testify, are unprepared for the questions as it pertains to either their job, their committee, their budget, their department, their program. And you said before, you hinted at it, sometimes is it just strategic to withhold information from the public view? And if it is so, when has that occurred to your frustration? If you could give us an example. Of course, not right now.
No, I'm going to give you right now. Okay. I asked a question.
I try and spare them.
No, this is just dialogue. Department of Health was before us. So I know that the building across from Kmart, Sunny Hills, Kentucky, the yellow building, was being rented by Department of Health. So I looked at that building for the last 2 years and 7 months. Sit empty, some Department of Health vehicle parked there, but nobody has moved in. So I asked a question, how much are we paying for that building? Because I really wanted to know how much money we pay to keep that building empty.
Mhm.
So they said, we're not paying anything for that building. So I was like, okay, which was a true statement, but they know where I was coming from. So I said, did we build out that building? They said, no, we never built out the building. I said, we never spent a dime on building out the building? No, we never built it out. We never spent a dime. I said, listen, have you not had a lease for that building? Silence. They finally said, yes, we had a lease for the building. How long was the lease? 2 years. What was the cost of the lease of the building? $240,000. So they were trying to hide the fact that they spent $240,000,
Call it a quarter of a
Keep
mil.
it.
$250,000 to keep a building empty. So I was like, really? You spend $240,000 to keep a building empty, and you owe $5 million in vendor payment? Does that make sense? So they then said, well, you would be happy to know that the build out was going to cost $500,000. And since we were rebuilding Charles Howard Hospital, we decided to discontinue with the contract. So you would be happy that we didn't spend that $500,000.
You already
So my answer was, shouldn't you have conducted that analysis before you spend the $240,000? You're telling me now I should be happy with you not spending $500,000 more? You should have known, and you knew that Charles Howard was going to be rebuilt. So somebody might have said, oh, he's being hard on them. But I was literally like upset. Like, how did you spend $240,000? The next example, Office of the Lieutenant Governor. We bought the first Penn building. You guys are young. Well, you should know enough.
Don't age me also.
You're older than them. You should know. We're First Bank across on Christian's Credit
Bank, yeah.
That building
That has been
See, so you
sitting
know.
for a
but it belongs to
long
us,
time.
right? So we passed the money to purchase that building. The last term was in the Senate before this. I sat out 2 years.
Mhm.
So we passed it in the 34th. In order to move Ricardo deeds, officers and governor, certain officers in there. And they have done nothing. So they closed out on the building February of last year. They were able to get a deed conveyed, etc.
So
And it has sat empty while they are paying $214,000 to rent a private space. So we said, well, what's wrong with the building? We need 2 AC units. Well, why did you get the 2 AC unit? What's holding up getting the 2 AC unit? And her answer was, well, you'll be very happy to know that our employees are working in a moldy building and we moved them out and now they're happy. But we're paying $200,000 and we have a building we spent $1 million for that was functional before First Bank left.
So I'm tracking with you. You guys are tracking.
I have a question.
Here we go.
When we have agencies going to testify, I believe they have to send their
Testimony.
Yes. What is the process for you to send back and say, I don't see this in here. I need this. What's the time frame for them to get those numbers? Because over and over, I've seen this senator will talk, this senator will talk, this senator, and all four of them said, you need to have this number. You need to have this. So everybody here had an opportunity to read it.
Are you thinking very logically?
I'm trying to.
Yeah, but a lot of times you get the testimony
Right
the
before.
morning
That's what I figured.
of the testimony.
Now,
So you'll say,
is this
you
strategic?
need to send it 4 days before. If they know it's going to be controversial, you're getting it 4 days before. You might get it 1 o'clock in the morning.
So there's no
before.
penalties?
There's no penalties because what can you do in terms of penalties?
I like that question. Is the legislature a toothless tiger?
Not really.
What teeth?
But there's no penalty. You can't slap somebody on the wrist because we have different functions. I mean, we're thinking about different crafting legislation in terms of individuals spending funds that they don't have access to as to how we can penalize. But the only penalty that you could really do is to write legislation where if somebody do X, Y, and D, Z, they're suspended or they're terminated.
But you're still beholden to the executive branch executing the laws that.
Correct.
Mikey, jump in.
And it's interesting that you say this with the that because like look, y'all came off of the subpoena hearing for Polly Joseph Stadium, and you had a senator. I'm like, yeah, if you watch, you're not. I'm gonna say there was nothing you could do because there was somebody that did not answer said subpoena, didn't show up at all.
Well, we could send somebody to pick you up.
Yeah.
We could do that.
Exactly.
But we have the option of sending the Capitol Police
Mm-hmm.
to pick that person up because it was subpoenaed.
So think about that. You ignore the subpoena. Like
Nothing happened.
yeah, nothing happened. But this is something so important because yeah, as you heard from it, Frank, yeah, whoever had the whole running joke and the whole hearing, everything is mapped. Everything is mapped.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is mapped. So I'm like, okay, well, so this person didn't show up. How then do we hold accountability when we come and we say it's the people's money? They're saying Fed money is the people's money.
For that hearing, we wanted GC,
Mm-hmm.
and we had GC there, which was
Yeah.
also. We wanted Public Works, and we had Public Works there. And we had property and procurement there. So the person that wasn't there was really, I think, the OMB director, and he might have been off island, but we had the key players. And that is why the hearing went on. Now, I have been pushing for that hearing from the time I got in to the legislature in January, because the Polly Joseph Stadium monies were local funds, were general funds. It's not federal monies. And the contractor, we have already paid $25 million. So I have been questioning from the time, the last time I was in there, how did you guys get to that figure? How are you able to accumulate $25 million with what we look at on a regular basis? It doesn't look like $10 million. It doesn't look like 25.
Wow.
So we wanted to make sure that we bring in the contractor. I was pushing that we need to bring him in, and we need to force him to be accountable, because he's literally doing whatever he wants. Now, the argument have been that the contracting, the contract that is written through P&P should have in clear guidelines that mandate that you must finish by a certain time period. But when we looked at the documents that P&P had and Public Works had, the government gave him over 800 days additional time in change orders. So he wasn't doing this by himself. He was saying, hey, I need 6 more months, and they have been signing off. After the 6 months, I need 4 more months, and they're signing off. So I'm like, where is our penalty phase? How much more, how many more times are you going to sign off on an extension period for a contractor that refused to send a full crew to Polly Joseph to finish the stadium? So it makes you feel like, and that's what I asked them. Something is wrong when you have government officials trying to justify $25 million spent for a contractor, and you're there giving all type of justification as to why this took place. And you could see that nobody at that hearing was comfortable with the answers. So it made me think that, hey, you guys are hiding something, or somebody told you to just come and try to justify because you're going all around the bush. But at what point was the Commissioner of Public Health going to say, well, we're going to hold him responsible, we give him this X amount of days, and we didn't give him nothing more?
Jump in, Mikey.
I
Going
know.
in a different direction right now.
No, this isn't a bad thing. This is a thing we've been saying. I know since I've been small, like going to school and stuff. Like, there is not a funding problem. There is there's a management problem in the VI that we are constantly overlooking. And this is why I think people get upset, they get angry, they lose faith, and they lose faith in the Senate at times. And you continually you're seeing an interest bubble back up, like you said, with 340 comics and all of that. But there's also that underlying, you go in the comments on Facebook under the hearings, you see that the community people are really interested in what's going on, are repressing the questions. But then it's like you're fighting a losing battle, because you're like, when are things going to get better? We see all kind of issues going on.
As long as we continue to keep the pressure on. Part of the issue have been when the legislature just back off. They're not asking the relevant question. They're protecting this person, they're protecting that person. But if you have a legislature that is going to pull you in front and ask you the hard questions on a regular basis, guess what? When you come in, you don't want the hard questions. A lot of time, you'd be surprised that we're having a hearing, and Dorsey was supposed to be paid $200,000 for services that were done 6 months ago. And Dorsey wasn't paid, but I call a hearing and Dorsey is paid 4 days before, because they know I'm going to ask a question. So now they're hustling to pay you. And I'm like, you could have done that all the time. Why didn't you do it?
So sometimes I'm struggling, and I guess it's an unavoidable part of this conversation. There is the appearance of government and order in the Virgin Islands, and then there are things unspoken, but everybody knows how it actually gets done. And in recent news, recent testimony, it was put on the record that this is how commissioners all make a little change. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go read something. Senator, you already know what I'm talking about. Big problem. Biggest elephant in the room. Does the legislature have a way to truly unearth the nepotism, corruption, and mismanagement by GVI?
Well, nepotism isn't a crime.
I label all three of them. It's a hydra. It's a three-headed dragon. Because they all help enable each other.